Hey there, scary story fanatics! Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Now, before we get started, wait, what was I doing again? Well, it seems like I'm forgetting more and more these days. While I try to figure out what it was I wanted to say, why don't you check out the newest addition to Hillbilly Creeper's terrorific library, Memory Eater.
Have you ever had a family member who suffered from a mental illness like dementia or Alzheimer's? Or someone who just simply forgot about something and can't remember what it was? Well, what if I told you it wasn't due to a mental illness or lack of memory? What if I told you it was something not of this world, something more sinister than that? People are losing their memories because of a creature called the Memory Eater. The Memory Eater is a monster from another universe that feeds on the thoughts of innocent people, sometimes killing them in the process. How do I know this, you might ask? It's because I saw the damn thing. It happened years ago when I was a younger man, working in a nursing home. My job was to take care of dementia and Alzheimer patients. To me, it was a very simple job. All I had to do was make sure they were comfortable, make sure none of them wandered off from home, and make sure nothing startled them. So one night, when my shift began, I was sitting there enjoying a warm cup of coffee when I heard screams coming from one of our residents. It was Mrs. Gertrude. I ran to her quarters to see what was the matter, and when I got there, she was lying unconscious on the floor. I went to help her, making sure she didn't hurt herself in some way. I got behind her to lift her up back onto the bed, and that's when I saw something. I saw she had blood dripping from her head. At first, I thought she had hit her head on the nightstand, but on further examination, I saw marks on the head. It appeared to be bite marks of some kind. I obviously thought this was strange, so I tried asking her what had happened, and she looked at me with a serious face and asked me who I was. I was shocked to hear this because I've been working here for over 3 years, and Gertrude has been somewhat like a grandmother to me, and never really forgotten me. I shrugged it off as some type of amnesia, until weeks, even months went by, and she didn't remember me. Even her own children and grandchildren had become a faded memory. You're probably thinking, well, amnesia and dementia hits a person all of a sudden, which I would be inclined to agree with you, but it didn't stop with Gertrude. It started to spread like a plague all over the nursing home. Every last senior citizen began to lose memories that they used to talk about like it was yesterday. Now they can't even remember what they had for breakfast. The staff and the doctors tried everything to find out what was going on, how this could be happening, but they never came to a conclusion other than dementia or Alzheimer's. Normally everything was fine. I would sit there, taking sips of my coffee and watching something on my iPhone. This particular night, however, something caught my eye. I only caught a glimpse of it at first, so I got up to investigate. I went looking around each hallway, trying to figure out what I had seen and not cop it up to an illusion. That's when I heard it. a nasty slurping noise coming from one of the tenants' quarters. So, I crept in quietly, trying not to surprise whatever the fuck it was. Right there, on one of our seniors' chests, was a creature with glowing, yellowish golden eyes, greenish skin, and a large, gaping mouth with a tongue hanging out of it. However, this creature's tongue was anything but ordinary. It looked like a garden hose with teeth protruding from the end. It started to feed on the elderly man, sucking on his brain and sucking out the juice, like from a juice box. When I got closer to the thing, it saw me and retracted its tongue back into the gaping void of its mouth. It stared at me for what seemed like an eternity, but it was only a few moments. Those were the longest minutes of my life, having to stare at this thing, hoping that it didn't lunge at me. Instead, it winked at me. I also swear this thing smiled at me. Then it ran off back into the darkness from where it had come from. After that, I snapped back into reality and rushed over to the poor man, trying to wake him up. But sadly, I was too late. He had died due to this thing. I knew this had to be the cause of every senior in here losing their memories so quickly, because it kept on happening over and over again. The more it happened, the more frequently I stumbled across that creature. So, I turned in my 2 weeks' notice and left that place, because I did not want anything to do with that monster and what it was doing. It wasn't even months later when I came across the thing again. I got a call from the hospital telling me my grandmother was very sick and that someone needed to be there. So, since I'm the only one left in my family, due to my mother and father dying, I was the only candidate to take care of my grandmother's financial problems and attributes. I rushed to the hospital to stay by her side in her last moments. As I got there, she lay there in the hospital bed, weak and sickly looking. When I got close to her bedside, she looked at me as if she didn't even know me. My stomach dropped when she cleared her throat and asked me who I was. When I heard this escape her lips, all I thought about was that monster that was taking the thoughts and memories from people. I kept on trying to make my grandmother remember her own grandson, but I had no such luck. I stayed with her anyway that night. As I slept, dreams of running into that creature still coursed through my mind. All of a sudden, I was awoken by a noise, thinking it was one of the nurses coming in to check on my grandmother. But I was wrong. Instead of a nurse, I was greeted by that damn thing again. It was feeding on my grandmother. Fits of rage overtook me, and I grabbed the thing from my grandmother's chest. I ripped its tongue from her skull, fighting with it. This thing tried to sink its tongue into me when I grabbed it with one hand and squeezed it tight. It let out a horrible shriek of pain, unlike anything I've ever heard before. So, as I had it by its tongue, causing it extreme pain, I started twirling the damn thing in circles, and then slinging it out the window, which of course shattered the glass. Once this happened, alarms started to go off in the hospital, and the hospital staff and security rushed into the room. They saw me covered in blood and glass. One of the security staff asked me what had happened here. So, I made up a lie and told them that someone came into my grandmother's room and tried to rob us, so I fought them off and tossed them out the window. That was the only thing I could think of, because I sure as hell wasn't going to tell them that I fought a mind-sucking monster off my grandmother. They would have locked me away if I'd told them the truth. That's when head of security ordered the others to look around the hospital grounds and see if they could find any trace of the thief or body due to my grandmother's room being on the second floor. As they looked around the grounds, they couldn't find anything. They definitely didn't find a body, so I wasn't charged for murder or anything like that. That was the last time I saw that creature. About a few years later, after that, my grandmother passed away. She had a beautiful funeral, and I ended up settling down with a beautiful woman and had a couple of kids, who in turn gave my wife and I a few grandchildren. I had a few jobs after that, but now I'm retired. Here, in the retirement home, living out my days with my beloved wife. I know that you're probably thinking, why would I be in a retirement home after all that happened years ago? Well, what if I told you I was preparing for that damn thing to show up? So far, nothing has happened, but I'm concerned though. Just the other day, my wife of 20 years slowly remembered where her purse is, but now she's beginning to forget. It doesn't stop there. She's slowly starting to forget bigger things like our anniversary, which she always looked forward to, and our children, and our grandchildren. Eventually, she forgot me, her husband of 20 years. I knew it was that monster again, meddling in my life, fucking with my beloved. So one night, I kept watch as I waited for that creature to show up. Doing this night after night finally paid off. I saw the thing creeping into others' rooms, so I followed it. As it was feeding, I snuck up on it and grabbed it once more, exactly like I did all those years ago, but this time, I was ready for it. I pulled out a sharp knife from my pocket that I had kept hidden in my room and plunged it into that fucking thing. It let out a horrible shrieking scream. I kept on stabbing it over and over and over again, making sure the fucking monster stayed dead. When it was finally over, and I had won the fight that the creature's body was still, did I dispose of it, cutting it up into bits in my room. The next day, when no one was looking, I buried it out in the garden of the home. Finally, my mind was at ease, and I got my revenge for all these years. I was able to rest easy. A month after that, my wife passed away due to complications of heart failure. So now, I'm all alone, but able to sleep in peace knowing that no one else has to suffer. That is, until I woke up one night and, over my bed, I saw two glowing, yellowish golden eyes peering through the darkness right at me.
Sometimes you just have to wonder how much of the unexplainable is malicious rather than benign. And before you forget, set that notification so you can return here next weekend for some more fearful fun. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so I can catch you all next... Huh? Oh! No! Ah!